Oh my goodness. All right, Coast to Coast Combat Hour. Ed Carbajal with Matt Hawkins as always, and this is the one after Bellator 222. Matt, so your boy's back for one final run. You were the first person I thought about when I heard they announced Fedor Emelianenko returning back to for his farewell tour. Uh, I thought I'd get a reaction out of you since that's your favorite guy on the whole planet universe.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was unexpected. I didn't know what he was going to end up doing, but you know, it is what it is. I just hope that they do it right. Give him a proper send off. I don't know who he's going to fight. I know Coker was talking about doing it in different locations where he's never been before, so that adds a little bit of a interesting thing to it, considering that he's been in most of the locations around the United States. He's obviously already been to Japan in his career. He's obviously so um, I'm not sure exactly what that means, unless they're planning on him fighting in like you know Dothan, Alabama, or something like that. But you know,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's Fedor. If he wants to fight, he's earned the right to fight, and there's certain fights I wouldn't take if I was him. But obviously he's not going to back down from anything that Bellator
Yeah,
wants to
him
set up.
him and Josh Barnett is one I know they're interested in, and I'm trying to think like with Mitrione and Karatanov on that August 24th card in Connecticut. They know that the Russian fighters draw in this region because that's still kind of like even though that's super north, that's northeast. I wouldn't be surprised if they try. They only announced Mitrione and Karatanov too, so I wouldn't be surprised if they try to load that up. Being that it's the first event in an arena in Connecticut, not not on a reservation.
Perhaps I don't know if I don't know. I feel like that Fedor, if it's him and Barnett, certainly that's going to be a main event. I don't
Mm.
know. So that would be the only thing that would throw me off there. I just try to think about who he's going to fight. So if he's got three more fights left, they talk Rampage, but Rampage has always said he never wanted to fight Fedor and doesn't have any real plans to. So that one seems odd. The Barnett's one of the fights I wouldn't do if I were Fedor. I think it's a tough fight for him now, and I feel like Barnett dropped the ball on the opportunity to be able to fight him by testing positive for steroids and getting their previous bout canceled.
Yeah.
So that I kind of hold a grudge against Barnett for that. So I don't know if that's a fight I would reward Barnett without him having to grind out a couple other wins, perhaps. But I don't know. I know Bigfoot Silva is probably a free agent out there somewhere. Probably somebody that Fedor would like to get another shot at.
What about Jake Hager?
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like it should be an older guy that's
Yeah,
paid some
yeah, yeah.
dues, and I know you're joking, but you never know, really. I don't know. Maybe another shot at Mitrione. If Mitrione beats Karatanov, maybe he wants a chance at him again. Uh, but it's hard to say. And who's going to end up falling out of the UFC in the next 6 to 12 months that could potentially be uh, if Arlovsky, for instance, gets cut by the UFC, do they revisit that fight? Um, Stuff like that. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I saw we've had Yuri Thompson on the show a couple times just to talk about the fights, and he made a interesting thing about how Bellator's had some shows in Italy and around Rome and stuff, and if they were, Coker kind of joked about doing it, or I don't know if he joked, but he kind of talked about doing an event in the Roman Coliseum. And
Mm.
if
That'd
you
be
were going to
pretty
do,
cool.
if you're going to do a real retirement fight for Fedor, maybe you pull him and Bigfoot, or him and you know I don't know, Mariusz Podzinski or something, like the world's strongest man from KSW. Maybe you get some crazy fight like that and you put it in the Roman Coliseum or something, which would be an interesting one. So in theory, you could do like Rome and then Japan and Moscow or something, is what I think in my mind when I think of him doing a farewell tour. If assuming he's done in the United States, I feel like he still owes San Jose a show, considering that's where the initial
Oh yeah.
Mitrione fight was canceled. So maybe you look to maybe early next year you do Mitrione Fedor 2 and you bring it back to San Jose to give the fans there the fight
Yeah,
that was kind of
Coker
pulled from
likes.
them.
Yeah, Coker likes doing stuff in San Jose too. So that's actually probably a great idea. But I mean, we got to see if it's him and Mitrione. We obviously the August 24th bout's got to happen first. Before they start trying to sell Mitrione a fight, he's got to fight. He's got to get a W, a solid W, not a ball kicking W, over over Karatanov. Because
Yeah, yeah. No,
that's just a do over from the last time.
I don't think that would be the first fight of the. Let's say if Fedor's doing 3 fights, I don't think that would be the first. That would be my second or my third, fight that to do with him. The first one I'd give him, especially coming off that tough loss to Bader, I'd try to give him somebody considered a little bit easier. And again, I can't think off the top of my head, but somebody maybe not who's as huge of a puncher. Try to get Fedor a win to get rolling on this, and then see what happens. But like I said, it's great. I hope he does another fight around me. I'd love to watch him compete one more time, especially kind of wash the taste of the Bader fight out of my mouth, but out of
Yeah.
my memory. But other than that, I mean, he's one of the all-time greats. He's going to be an all-time great, and good for him, man. Good for
Yeah.
Bellator, and
Well,
good for him all around, really.
Well, speaking of all-time greats, Bellator 222 is probably their best event they've done here in the East Coast region. Obviously, with Chael retiring and Gracie's went 1-for-1 on the entire card. I mean, it was stacked from top to bottom. I mean, if you didn't watch it, I mean, the all the prelims are actually still on YouTube if you want to watch the undercard. I mean, some great fights there. I mean, obviously, there's stars that they were trying to build, and then stars were born when you look at some of the guys that won versus some of the guys that lost. So I don't know, where do you want to start, man? Because there's so many good fights on the card. What was the fights that stood out to you?
Well, I mean, if we're just going to start down at the prelims, Hobson Gracie Jr. moving to
Yeah,
2-0. I believe he's the son of Hoist Gracie. Um, I believe, about 99% sure. So he moves to 2-0. Obviously, Mike Kimball picked up another win and a decision,
yeah,
and that was big for him. One fight
and,
that really stood out for me was Lindsey Van Zant. I feel like she pulled off kind of an upset over Reina Cabuto
oh yeah,
coming
yeah.
over from Ryzen. I don't think many people expected that, and certainly didn't expect a finish 4 minutes into the fight by submission.
Yeah, man. Actually, that interview is up on her post-fight scrum, is on the Blogboard Jungle YouTube channel. So if no one has seen it, they should check that out. I wrote about it over at SureDog because I was covering the event for them. Yeah, man. She was definitely one of the people that when we were watching it, we were all just like shocked at not only the fact that it was a first round finish, but how, I don't want to say easily. She actually admitted that standing with Kabuto was a big mistake if she tried to stand with her. So, which is why she took her down so quickly. I mean, I know Rena's background is in striking, so she definitely had a reach advantage on her too. So, super smart thing to do. And when that choke was in, man, boy was it in. It was probably one of the deepest chokes of the night. I was just like shocked. That happened right. I was watching it from the back because we were talking to I think Hayam Ghazali was just before her, where he had that triangle choke finish. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so that was another first round finish too. So there was obviously a lot of fights that stood out on that, but that one's the most. I hope they use her again. She normally fights at 105 too, but in the article I said I hope that maybe they send her over to Ryzen, since obviously she's got a win over one of their guys, and Coker Legs doing this Bellator versus Ryzen thing, or at least for one fight. He did say they were going to send a few fighters over there in October, so. Yeah, man. I mean, that was definitely one that stood out to me as well. And then you mentioned the Hobson Gracie. I mean, that armbar, ooh, he bent that dude's arm the other way. Felt that in my elbow watching that fight.
Yeah, Van Zant moves to 6-1, and on a 3-fight win streak. So yeah, and if you say she normally fights at 105, that would fit perfectly into Ryzen, and any matches that or any swaps that the two promotions can do is obviously awesome. And maybe I don't know if Rena wants to fight again or not. I know she was kind of down out after the bout.
Yeah.
But you never know. Maybe they run it back again in Japan. So then that match was followed by a fight that I think was way more competitive than a lot of people expected, with Valerie Lareda
and
Larkin Dash. Dash showed some grit. I know she moves to 0-2 as a professional, but you can't really blame her heart. She stood in there and she wasn't super active late in the fight, but she kept coming forward and forced Lareda to fight.
And she wasn't gassed either, which I thought was cool to see. She said she was already preparing for a fight when they called her. That she was one of the last minute fighters that they picked up to add to the card to get Lareda on the card and have someone fight her. Like you said, more competitive than a lot of people anticipated, and that was because she actually has more amateur experience than Lareda, which Lareda knew about. She's another. I interviewed her on Media Week, both of them actually. Both those interviews are on SureDog and the YouTube channel. Folks want to check it out. But Lareda, with the short time she had, she did do homework on her, and it looks like she didn't do what she said she was going to do during the interview, which she knew she was a southpaw, so she said she was going to circle away from her left to avoid her power hand. But I think we saw her go that into it a lot of times in that fight, especially towards the end when she caught her with that haymaker that landed. She stumbled back from it, and she also had this weird she would throw a punch and catch Lareda's hand, and she kind of whipped her into her power hand. I don't know if you saw it. It happened a couple of times during the fight.
Uh-huh.
And that's kind of what helped her land that shot that knocked her back. So it looks like Dash had some sort of game plan that sort of worked for her, but not enough to win. But like you said, man, that was definitely one that was exciting.
Yeah, I think she was it was close. I mean, it was one judge I think had it 29-28, the other two had it 30-27. But the third round, Dash didn't really fire much off. She kind of kept pushing forward, but really didn't unload with anything. So it made it pretty easy for the judges. But
yeah,
it'd be interesting to see what Lareda goes from here. She's obviously going to at some point have to face a little bit stiffer competition, but she is only 2-0. And if anything, the next fight teaches us that we shouldn't push these up and coming fighters, as we saw Aaron Pico fall again by knockout.
Yeah.
Fighting a 12-0 coming into the fight, Adam Borish. Pico came in 4-2, and his first fight loss technically wasn't a knockout, but he was dropped and then choked out, and then he suffered the devastating KO to Henry Corrales.
Mm-hmm.
Now he falls. Like I said, he takes his third loss, flying knee KO after basically dominating the first round and a half of the fight with his wrestling.
Yeah.
At least controlling the fight. There wasn't a lot of ground and pound. There wasn't a lot of damage done, but he was doing what I would have told him to do, basically. And I think I may have said on the show that I would have just tried to grind a guy out, win a decision, make the crowd boo, make it boring, but get your opponent afraid of the knockout punch. Unfortunately, he has a tendency to run into big shots, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, the game plan they had, obviously, that's his first fight after switching over to Jackson Wink. So the game plan they had was obviously solid. With the advantages he was having, trying to grind out a victory. But again, the 12-0. I mean, it's 2/3 more experience than he has. You know what I mean? And it was just when I was surprised he didn't get as many views as I would hope. But maybe after the fact. But I talked to his opponent on media day, Adam Borix, and he even said I've planned for he planned for all the variables that he would have thought Pico presented, including his strength and his boxing and his wrestling. And he actually said to me, "If he takes me down, I'm gonna get up," and he did. Like granted, Pico was holding him for down for a while, but he still, got over to the cage, used it to get it back up to his feet, and obviously once he started tracking how Pico was going for his takedowns, he was able to have him run right into his knee and get the knockout. But yeah, man, it was definitely it's one of those things where and I actually asked earlier. James Lynch likes to do his recaps Mondays on the score, so I had asked him, if he thought that what was next for Pico, and he said something that I agree with, that he just needs to take time off, like just if he's going to keep on and Bellator's going to keep investing in him, which Coker said that they would. He just needs some time to like sit back, reassess and evaluate, and maybe start taking some fights against guys that aren't like double his record.
Yeah, I mean, I think he just needs to take some time off to let his brain heal a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He's young, so I mean, if it were me, I would tell him to take about 2 years off. I don't know if that's what Lynch. I mean, you can still train, maybe do some grappling tournaments, maybe do some submission underground, maybe do something else, maybe focus on some kind of wrestling tournament or something just to keep competition. But if he turns around and signs something to fight in 3 or 4 months and gets KO'd again, he's done. He goes to 4-4. Just because we know he's talented, we can't treat him anybody different. Any other fighter that goes out there and gets blasted and KO'd, 4 out of 8 fights, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna say they shouldn't be fighting.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, it's like that, like Hisaki Kato. I used to say he's got 100% knockout rate. Either he's gonna knock someone out or he's gonna get knocked out, and you don't want another one of those.
Yeah, but he was a little older, and I mean, nobody expected Hisaki Kato to be, people were thinking Aaron Pico was going to be the next, John Jones, basically, for a lighter division. And I mean, that's at least the hype that was around him. People talked about him being, an amazing wrestler with Golden Gloves boxing. And after his first loss, he obviously fired off 4 wins in a row after that, and showed it, but it was against the weaker competition. And I wouldn't have given him this fight. I think it was too much coming off of a huge knockout loss where he got leveled. I don't know. Maybe a change of pace. Maybe you send him to Ryzen. There's some competition out there that's a little bit less, and maybe you let him go out there and get some, just kind of get away from the U.S. and the U.S. crowds, and let him go out there and try to get a win or two, or I don't know. But right now, I think it's best that he stays away for a while and lets his brain heal. I just feel like we're going to be dealing. We don't know where the brain injuries are going to lead to eventually with all these guys.
Yeah.
Now with MMA really picking up, and when you see a guy who's 20, was he 22, 23 years old?
22, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to see somebody stumbling around not being able to think when they're 26.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And that's the one thing I worry about. I don't know how hard his training is. I know he's been in good camps, so I don't think they're abusing him. But I don't know what kind of shots he took in his Golden Gloves coming up. I'm not real aware of that, but just a lot of brain trauma for a guy that we thought was mainly a wrestler. And when you think about that, you don't think about those guys getting KO'd so much. It would have surprised me a lot less if you told me he got caught in a couple, arm bars or a couple triangle chokes as a wrestler. You thought maybe he'd slip into something like that, but just to be getting hit hard and dropped is surprising. But obviously a big win for Borix. Goes to 13-0 and moves up their food chain. Heather Hardy was a disappointment. She got taken down by Taylor Turner and ground and pounded and had zero defense.
Yeah, she made some pretty bad mistakes that I mean, it's her first fight back, and she admittedly wanted to impose her she wanted to impose her striking and thought she could do what she did in her first the 2 wins that she does have. So now she's 2-2. At 37, I from folks I talked to on her management side, say that they she might. Well, I'll say that they want her to go back to boxing and try to get. But obviously, we know how boxing is and how they treat her. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if she insists on getting another fight in a cage, just because of the way she is about she's not somebody that sits in a loss. If anything, it makes her want to fight, do the same thing over again. And I wouldn't be surprised, especially losing in New York. She probably doesn't want that to be her last MMA fight. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see her in MMA again. Even though I've heard otherwise from other folks, but yeah, she. I know that Turner was I didn't even promote her opponent that much, but I knew she was on a 2 fight win streak. And when they faced off, I mean, when I saw the reach advantage, I thought maybe her boxing could, help her, use her angles and stuff to get in close. But I actually said to Jason Burgos, who was with me from Sherdog, I said, this is as soon as when the takedown happened, and she put up the opposite knee to stop the mount when it should have been the same side. I was kind of like, oh no, this is like reminiscent of the first UFC with when Art Jimerson was on his back. The only thing I'll say is that Turner, all those that ground and pound she mounted her and threw punches, they didn't look like they were doing much. It just looked annoying. And Heather Hardy was actually fine. The ref stopped it because of the time in the position, and I guess she was taking damage if you're looking at someone getting punched and someone throwing punches. But she didn't tap out. She didn't quit. It was just the ref saw enough. I honestly wish they would have let the round go. But it is what it is. New York, especially Madison Square Garden, with the history they have of brain trauma there. They had to play it safe.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get fully mounted, even if shots are not real hard landing. If it was obvious she had no chance of getting out. I mean, I think that's what it was more. She wasn't attempting any kind of escapes. She didn't seem to know anything. And this is not to bash Hardy. She's a badass. I mean, she's 22-0 as a professional boxer, and she's trying something different here in MMA.
Mm-hmm.
I put it more on Scott Coker, perhaps, on the matchups, and maybe they need to know that she's never going to necessarily be the Bellator world champion. I mean, she's not beating Ilima McFarlane anytime in the next 100 years.
No, and she's admittedly knows that too.
So, I mean, with that said, let's use her as kind of a spectacle and put her in with girls that are going to stand in front of her. I mean, I think that's what it's got to be.
I hear you, man. I think what we're looking at when we're looking at the like their prospects that they or the fighters that they try to market, the Pico, the Hardy, anyone else that they try to make a star, they need to match them with people with more closer overall fight records, wins and losses. Like at least keep the number somewhat even so that the fight is more even. I that was my thing with that's my thing with Aaron Pico, and I mean, so now Taryn Turner had 8 fights total versus Hardy's 3 before last Friday. It's like I know she's a world boxing champion, but you picked somebody that had 5 more fights than her, and that was probably like a whole foot taller than her and longer. So I don't know. I mean, I don't. Not for nothing. I actually one of the fights that I pitched afterward was like, if you're gonna get her back in there, how about her and Valerie Laredo? They're both strikers. They both have a young record, and they're probably the same as far as grappling. Laredo had nice scrambles. I think Heather Hardy can get her scrambles if she keeps training up with Longo and Sarah and them in Long Island. She can get her scrambles up to par. But both two strikers, and Hardy's got a kickboxing background too. She's got some amateur titles, so she like that would be a great fight. I think it would go all 3 rounds, and it'd be a barn burner. But we got to see what happens from here. I mean, the way because of Hardy's seniority in combat sports as a whole, and the fact that she's a champion in boxing, she's got titles she probably has to defend, and like I said, I know folks on her side would prefer to see her go back to boxing, but I mean, if we've learned anything about Heather Hardy, she's not somebody that likes to stay hit, so to speak. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw her back there. But that's a fight, man. I mean, I think that's a fight that people would pay money to see. Laredo versus Hardy.
No, that's a good matchup. Another one that would be a good matchup in theory, although she has a lot more experience, would be that I think Bellator just signed Beck Rollins, and
Mm.
she's the BKFC Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship uh, female champion. Uh, would she wrestle Hardy down in an MMA match? I don't know. She does have some wrestling abilities, but in theory, if you told me that the bare knuckle fighting boxing champion was going to come to Bellator and stand with Heather Hardy, that could be a potentially a fun fight, but it would be a mismatch record wise and
Yeah.
experience wise. So who knows? But there was a few more prelims that they squeezed in because the fights were going quick, but basically the main
So
card kicked off.
yeah.
What were you gonna say?
I know. I said, yeah, they went so quick. They were so fast. Like it was literally like as soon as fighters were walking out, I already heard the music for the next guy coming in. It was super fast in the garden.
Because there was no post limbs, right? They managed to squeeze all the prelims in.
All of them went in the order that they were listed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. When they get the three post limb bouts to fit in before the thing, that's good for the crowd though. That means the fights are going and things are happening. So that's great. And then that set it up for an exciting main card. Which kicked off with the fight that we talked a lot about, and I believe I picked correctly and you picked incorrectly. Kyoji Horiguchi becomes the
Uh,
bantamweight Bellator champion and
yeah.
Rising champion, defeating Darian Caldwell by decision, 4 rounds to 1. Uh, kind of
Uh,
surprised though by the fight.
yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I don't. I mean, I understand why the decision went the way that it did, but I was just like, I just I feel like Caldwell. I know he was visibly exhausted. Um, I know I saw the scorecard. I think Doug Crosby was one of the judges, but it was unanimous decision anyway, so that doesn't even matter. But I mean, I don't know. I
Don't
kind of
don't tell
felt
don't tell me you thought Caldwell won the fight.
no. I just I didn't think it was unanimous, because of the takedowns and control, and then the first round. I mean, I wasn't the only one. I mean, you can check Twitter. I mean, folks in the arena were like, "What are they standing him up for?" Like, because
Because
Caldwell was hitting him. This is the first takedown I'm talking about. Caldwell was landing elbows and hitting him, and keeping him there. I understand after that wasn't so much the case, but I saw active fighters and no need for the stand up.
well, that was because of the glove grab though, right?
Oh yeah, there. I mean, that's what they said. I honestly didn't see it because from where I was sitting, I couldn't see it. Um, Someone had to point that out to me. But then after the fact, I mean, does that mean like you stop grabbing gloves and throwing elbows? So if it was if I had any criticism, it was Caldwell didn't stay as busy as he had said he would leading up to the fight. I spoke to him 3 times total, including the interview that's on this podcast from last week's episode. And that was his plan, was to take him down and just rain elbows and knee him and strike him, all everything he could. But I don't know if it was the being in the garden and the fans that were there and everything, but obviously Horiguchi's used to that versus Caldwell, fighting in Japan, fighting in the UFC, and that little dude, the champ, the new champ, he's definitely got a lot of energy because he seemed ready to go some more even at 3 o'clock in the morning when we were around wrapping things up that night.
Yeah, no, the first round, I mean, Caldwell won the first round. I think every judge gave it to him. I didn't see the scorecards. I'm assuming the judges gave him the first round, and Caldwell
No,
rightfully should. They didn't give. Well, which round did they give Caldwell then? Because he
no.
certainly shouldn't have won 2 through 5.
I mean, I'd have to look at the. I know they sent it to me. I'd have to look up the email, but it's unanimous decision means that everybody scored for Horiguchi in
No,
total towards a fight, right? I
well,
mean,
yeah, but
well, it's 5 rounds, so yeah, I'd have
one
to look
one
at
judge
the.
had it 3-2, and then the other two judges had it 4 rounds to 1. And I assume that all three judges gave the first round to Caldwell. Um, I mean, there was rounds where Caldwell took him down and didn't even like land a punch. I mean, he threw maybe like he had. I think it was like the second or third round. He took him down and I think he threw maybe like 5 punches. Um, and I just don't think. I was glad they didn't reward that. Um, so I mean, I think the right guy won the fight. I think we saw a situation where the better MMA fighter is just Horiguchi. Uh, and I just think that's just the truth. And I mean,
Hold on. I got the scorecard up here. So the first round, all three judges gave to Caldwell. Like that's where I was. One judge gave Caldwell the first 2 rounds, and then obviously everyone else is after
okay,
that.
yeah, I'm looking at
It's
it
all
right now
yeah.
too. That's accurate. Then I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
accurate how it should have went. Obviously, the live is different, and when you see the wrestling taking place, but the bottom line is that there was very, very little striking from Caldwell. I'd like to see the the strike count. I should have looked that up too, but I just think Horiguchi's. I mean, the man's 28-2 now with his, and he's on a 13 fight winning streak now. I mean, there is just nothing bad to say about the guy.
Oh yeah, he's got to be. They need to make T-shirts for him on both promotions and make them for sale immediately,
Yeah, I mean, he
so that you can buy them.
yeah, he suffered an early loss, 7 or 8 fights into his career, and then in the last like 23 fights of his career, his only loss is to Demetrius Johnson.
Yeah, which is
Um,
saying a lot.
which yeah, and doesn't mean anything really as far as saying what you are as a fighter,
Yeah.
um, which is what you're saying. But I don't know. I mean, the guy's just amazing. He's become one of my favorite fighters, and I'm not a fan of the lightweights or the smaller guys. I've told you that several times in the past. But I think he's what you get, and I'm not a big Demetrius Johnson fan. I know a lot of people are. But
Mm-hmm.
my biggest beef with Demetrius Johnson was what seemed like his fear to go up and fight bigger guys. And Horiguchi is exactly what I'd want to have for my guys in any weight class. He's willing to go up and fight. He's
Yeah,
willing to
yeah,
go up and fight anybody.
yeah,
And the
yeah.
same can be said right now for Henry Cejudo. And I joked
Yeah,
about it, but
and they both want to fight each other too.
I mean, I said it. I said it online the other day, and I don't know if it's the number one fight I'd want to see, but Horiguchi Cejudo would be one of the top 3 fights in MMA right now to go down.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean
I
that
mean,
would.
if UFC was to stop being a bunch of jerks and do one cross promotional fight, that would be the one to do. But the thing is, I honestly feel like they don't want to risk. I mean, Bellator doesn't care because it's the contract is that he still has to defend that title at least once a year. So it's they kind of sort of have like on they have a rising fighter under contract. You know what I mean? Like he's sort of under contract with them because of that. In a light-handed way or however you want to put it. And because of that, look at right after that. I mean Juan Archuleta called him out immediately after that, and he already wants to go there and fight him. Go over there and fight him for the Rising title in October. So it's like they just opened the door for this really cool way to make the sport awesome. And Horiguchi, I don't. He's obviously he wants to fight everybody too. I mean, he even said, Cejudo said it leading up to his fight at 238, and then if you watch, he did an interview with Helwani in the lobby there of the Hulu Theater, and he was just like, yeah, I want Cejudo, I want them all, and I was just like, man, this guy, come on, man, like the sport has to eventually, catch. In that sense, they need to catch up to boxing and let these title holders fight each other.
Yeah, I mean, the UFC is just never going to let their title. I mean, if there ever was a cross promotional matches, I don't think we'd ever see UFC belts on the line. Let's just put it that way. They might do
Yeah.
some kind of non-title stuff.
Bullshit. That's
Yeah,
bullshit.
I mean it is what it is, and at least the Bellator and Ryzen are doing this, and like you said, I mean Archuleta gets a huge knockout win over Eduardo Dantes.
Oh
I mean, he moves to 23-1. I mean, you're starting to see some records out of some of these guys, which
yeah,
is awesome to see because you just don't see it in MMA. You don't see a lot of 28-2s.
yeah.
You got Khabib in UFC, and I mean, that was the whole thing about Fedor and his legacy is that when you'd look at his record,
Oh
you'd
yeah,
see he was
back
like 31-1 and
when he was in
32
his
and
prime, yeah, man, that was like
I mean, and you didn't see that. You'd look at the other heavyweights in MMA. You'd look at Randy Couture, and he was like 17-9. You know, you'd see stuff like that, and it would always. That's what made him stand out. So when you got Horiguchi at 28-2, I mean, just looking at it on paper, and now you see Archuleta at 23-1, and with just devastating knockouts in 2 out of his last 3 fights over Robbie Peralta and Eduardo Dantes here, and the idea of, I mean, I think I said it at the beginning of this year, was this year's New Year's gift that I'd like to see Ryzen really take off and bring back Japanese MMA, and Horiguchi might be the guy that does that for him.
yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
I wasn't aware of the 13-year history Sakakibara and Coker had. They talked about it during the week. They Sakakibara did a quick little media scrum on the Wednesday before the event. Talked about how he and Coker helped each other out. Way back when. And This is kind of like for Ryzen's growth. This is Coker kind of, or rather, he helped Coker out. So this is Coker returning the favor, and it looks like it's just how they're both winning off of this thing. I mean, people been all over this Horiguchi thing, and I just I think that if you look at Horiguchi holding those 2 belts, man, that huge ass Ryzen belt. If you look at it, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing. You remember back in the day, and this is boxing stuff from back in the day. I wish we had poor old Daniel Zaldivar on the podcast to talk about it. But I mean, when Roy Jones was king of the middleweights, he had to walk in the ring holding his belts with another guy holding the other belts that he had. You know what I mean? And I think those are the true world champions. That like if somebody holds a title in the promotion, you call them a world champion. But it's like, are they if they're not fighting the best guy? The best guy and the other top promotions. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, man. I mean, I really do hope that I think we're gonna see it when you and I are old, Matt, in the old folks' home. We'll probably be streaming a pay-per-view, with some little plug-in thing in our head, like some Black Mirror shit, and and watching watching the champion of the universe MMA fights.
yeah, maybe. I mean, right now, there's just too much greed, and
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about the 125-pound fighters, then we know that there's Demetrius Johnson, there's Horiguchi, and there's Cejudo. Those are the 3, without question, top 120 to 133-pound fighters in the world, and the fact that
no striking vipers though.
no, but the fact that they're in 3 different organizations now is weird. But I don't know. Maybe Coker can work something out with one, and get them on board with Ryzen, and maybe this starts to work around. But like I said, we got Archuleta now. I mean, you got some legitimate, and Archuleta could eventually become a 2-division champion at 125 or 135 and 145. He's basically the number 1 contender at both weight classes at this point. I mean, maybe not quite the number 1 contender at 145, but he definitely is at 135 now, and he's right there.
Yeah. And what about? I mean, you look at. I mean, Caldwell and Horiguchi fought at bantamweight, and obviously Archuleta doesn't mind going down, dropping the 10 pounds and facing Horiguchi. Maybe they do a catchweight something. Who knows? But the fight after that, Patrick Mix, he took out Ricky Bandejas, which Patrick Mix is now 11-0, and kind of came in under the radar. Super soft-spoken guy, but I remember when I did talk to him, one of the things he said was like, you're gonna see, and that choke that he sunk in fast in the first round was, it was short work for him in the Garden.
Yeah, it was unexpected. We both talked about how we didn't know a lot about him, and we both picked Bandejas to win, kind of based on bigger show experience. But obviously that was wrong, and he surprised Bandejas, took his back, seconds into the first round.
Yeah,
finish him.
He actually Nolan King, that's been on this podcast, he picked that fight too. He knew actually did know a lot about Patrick Mix, and So when I talked to him that night, because he was there with MMA Junkie, shout out to Nolan King, full time at MMA Junkie. Um, he he actually called that. He was like, he's like, you wait till you see Patrick Mix, and he was right.
Yeah, no, it was a big surprise, and he, like you said, he moves to 11-0 now, and becomes a potential another contender. I mean, the Bellator, bantamweight and featherweight classes are really, really, really picking up here. We didn't really talk about before, but Dylan Dennis picked up another win. He moves to 2-0 against Max Humphrey. Total mismatch.
The greatest fighter ever to walk in the cage, Mexican fighter ever
Yeah.
to grace a cage.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't. I can't imagine people are actually tuning in to watch him. I know we see some of the Twitter crowd and stuff like that, but I mean, for him to be that high up on the card is kind of
Debunked the Drake curse.
yeah. Whatever. The guy is he's talented. I don't know. I mean, eventually he's gonna get smashed, so maybe that's what everybody will look forward to seeing.
Well, that's what folks are going to tune in for. I mean, he's doing the Mayweather thing that McGregor. I mean, dare I say, Chael Sonnen, he's using the formula to sell hate me and watch me, as long as you pay.
Well, there you go. Leading to Chael Sonnen, he he got knocked out with a knee too against Lyoto Machida in the second round after eating one in the first round and
Oh,
barely surviving.
I don't know if from home you could hear how hard that knee hit, but literally, like in the arena, you heard it. Like especially the second one, that was those were hard knees.
Yeah, Machida, I mean, pretty much just had him. Son couldn't put a game plan together, and it was Son. He showed I get on his case for tapping early and stuff, and I don't want to. That's just a fan's perspective, but obviously he fought through some stuff in that first round and showed a lot of heart. And then
Yeah.
second round, the ref stopped it just based off of combination of damage. But he claims to retire from the sport now, which means I fully expect to see him sign with Combate Americas and have a rematch with Tito Ortiz sometime in the next
I don't think
6 months.
he's gonna do that. I doubt that happens.
Oh,
I mean, Tito's been signed with Combate. I mean, God bless. Happy birthday to Campbell McLaren, by the way. Today's his birthday. But I think I mean we haven't heard about a fight. The rumor was against Alberto Del Rio, but now we haven't heard anything. I mean, there's an event on Friday actually, the one in Hidalgo, the Combate event, and I hope they make an announcement regarding Tito then, because obviously, you made a big deal about his contract sign. You gotta say something. But I don't see Chael going to Combate to fight over there.
probably
If anything,
not. I mean, I'm joking, but if they offer him Tito in Mexico City or something like that, I could see Sonnen doing it. Probably
that's one I know. I know he'd like to get back though. So
yeah, that's what I mean. But either way, I mean, he wraps up his career. He's had a lot of ups and downs, and I haven't always been a huge fan of his, but I've seen him fight obviously plenty of times. And
I have a really good op-ed piece in the pipe. I don't know if Sherdog's gonna fucking publish it. Anyway, I submitted it on Sunday. It's here we are on Tuesday going into Wednesday. But if they publish it, man, I mean it's an op-ed piece about what made me write it is how I became a fan of the guy. I mean, I was a mark. I hated him obviously when everyone else hated him before I realized, oh shit, this is the game. This is why I'm watching. He's doing this to make me watch.
Well, it's got to be better than the garbage I've read the last couple days coming out of what is it, Kevin Iole and friggin' Elias Cepeda, two of the biggest hacks in all of MMA media. I'll straight say it. Just two guys who just write pure garbage on a weekly basis, bashing him, calling him a racist, just straight garbage stuff that just garbage.
Yeah, I know he's not. I mean, as much as and I like Elias, he's a fellow jiu-jitsu guy and stuff like that. But when I read that, I was kind of like, "Yo, did you not get what was going on there?" Like, I mean, Chael Sonnen is far from racist. just because
No,
the
I'll
stuff he
say it.
said. Yeah.
He's just a straight garbage writer who writes stuff to try to get clicks. He's always done it. Why isn't he calling out Conor McGregor? Call out Conor McGregor for racism. He did the exact same thing, but he
Yeah.
won't do it because then it might impede on him getting any kind of credentials or getting around these guys.
Oh
So
yeah. I mean, we know Yahoo's are shields for the UFC. Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's 100% shill work. He works for the underground, a shill forum. It's 100% shill work.
Yeah.
These articles that come out when guys retire have the balls to do it before, where you might have to face the guy face to face. Like when you're in there doing interviews and stuff. Don't come out after they retire and start calling him the biggest cheat of all time. We all know Sonnen's history. He doesn't even hide it. So
No,
let's
that's yeah.
anybody you talk to behind the scenes, which these guys should be doing, that know Chael Sonnen on a personal level, will tell you he's one of the best guys they know. I've ran into his personal friends at restaurants just out of the blue when I go to fights, that are there to watch him, and they all they can say is great stuff about how he's great to their kids and just a great family man and all this stuff. So and I'm defending the guy who I'm not even a big fan of. I've been just as critical of Sonnen as a competitor, um, and his failed drug tests. I'm not a fan of any of that stuff. But I'm not going to sit here in his retirement, after he goes out on his shield against an all-time great in Lyoto Machida and sit here and bash the guy.
Yeah.
Especially guys at that level of this media. We're sitting here down here trying to grind away, do this stuff. Those guys have the special opportunity to get out to a lot of voices and a lot of eyes and ears, and they spend the time writing that garbage. So again, just garbage, and I hope one day that those guys lose the ability to get to anybody's ear or eyes. So that's my rant.
Wow.
I know. We sit here and read garbage all the time, and it's the one thing that, everybody wants to be Stephen A. Smith on basketball or something, but even he's got a little bit more character than some of these nobodies. So that brings us to the main event, though. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Matt Smith. I appreciate it. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you there. But go ahead. You're going on to the main.
Yeah, no, we got to get through the show now. Get ripped too much, but main event, welterweight Grand Prix semifinal and welterweight world title fight. Rory McDonald, Neiman Gracie. Another fight where my pick. Now maybe Cepeda's and all these Ioli guys are better at picking fights than me, but it still doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. We did pick Neiman Gracie. We were completely wrong. Rory McDonald looked like old Rory McDonald, and put a whooping on Gracie and looked good in a ton of different aspects in the fight.
Yeah, I mean, it was just crazy. I mean, that's one thing that I haven't talked to my training partner since I covered the event, but one thing that if you have a good defense, man, you could hang in there, and that's pretty much when I grapple. I mean, you can if I get tapped enough in something, I make sure that you're not able to tap me in it, again or for a long time. And as close as some of those submissions came, I mean, the knee bar, the arm bar, all the stuff that, I mean, you went in there with a high level dude in jiu-jitsu, and you shut down all of his stuff, that he had. And I mean, questioning Rory before that, obviously we were concerned. I picked Neiman to win. I mean, you not only were they fighting in his backyard, but he seemed more focused than Rory, just because of the stuff with the John Fitch situation, who weighed in just as a backup. Which shows that even the promotion might have been worried. But yeah, man, no. Rory McDonald's obviously champ. He likes being champ, and he's gonna look to defend that belt. I know they want to do September, October for him in Lima. But Rory flat out said in the post-fight press conference he's not interested in that timetable. He prefers November, December. I mean, I would hope that the champ has some say in when that happens. I know it's a tournament, but it's also for his belt. And I think that would be a nice way to close out the year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly when they'll do it. I know Bellator's had. I feel like it's going to be on the West Coast. I don't know why. I just feel like the finals likely will be here on the West Coast, especially if it runs later into the year. September has been a fairly popular time for them to have a few events in San Jose.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that might pair nicely with a Fedor fight.
and
Just
they want to do it along in line with it because as that's coming to a close, I don't know if you saw. I uploaded the press conference yesterday, so if you haven't seen it, you can see Coker says. I mean, he says September, October, and obviously they'd like to close out this tournament before they start the featherweight one. But I mean, yeah, I would see that happening out your way.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe the end of September. I mean, maybe there could be something reached. That's still a few months away. He didn't take much damage in this fight. He really didn't take much damage in either of the last two fights. He just didn't look himself in the Fitch fight. Uh, like you said, as far as his grappling, he just seemed like he was always one step ahead of Gracie. Gracie got a couple, got a couple shots at a knee bar. One time had it fairly tight, and then had an armbar attempt and stuff that he probably catches an Ed Ruth or a less experienced guy in. And it just seemed like Rory was, that one chess move ahead where
Yeah,
he knew the move. He was able to make his move to defend it as it was happening, as opposed to getting it locked on and then trying to fight out of it, which is not necessarily a successful way to defend jiu-jitsu. Obviously, you never want
yeah.
to lock the hold on you. Always want to be one move ahead of him. So,
The knee bar especially I thought was I thought that was gonna be it, but I mean that goes to show you. I mean that Rory's just a different breed of them. That's why he's a champion. Um, but the other thing that a lot of folks don't know, Rory said the interview is up. It's on Sherdog and on the YouTube channel, where he says he's come out to train at Henzo's in New York before. So who knows how much of sometimes a lot of people in the same training space will share the same technique. So who knows how much he was aware of what Gracie would be bringing at him, which probably helped him in that fight because obviously, and then as the rounds went on, obviously it was a 5-round fight. Sweat would definitely help escape those other submissions. That's why I thought the knee bar was of the ones we were watching.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of people, and I'll be one to probably say me too, kind of slept on his ground game a little bit. We've gotten so used to him and being in brawls, and then we saw the Fitch fight. Looking back at his record, his previous fights before Fitch, which Fitch just does what he does. He fitches everybody and gets them in where he wants them, and he's just super successful. But we had Musasi, Lima, Daly, Stephen Thompson, Robbie Lawler, Tarek Safadine, Tyrone Woodley. You have to get all the way back to Damian Maya before you had a fight where he was probably thought that it was going to be a ground fight, uh, and that was all the way back at UFC 170. And even before that, you got Lawler and Ellenberger, and so you're dealing with a guy who's really hasn't. This is the first fight where we thought he was going to be up against a ground specialist with some serious submission skills, whereas Fitch just kind of controls you. And I think we learned that not everybody's John Fitch, obviously. So you can't. It's not as easy to get the takedown, and Rory is obviously a lot better at submission defense than we gave him credit by picking Gracie going into the fight. So that's just that. Gosh, we were gonna get into some other stuff. Running a little long here with my little rant there, but this weekend we got the bare knuckle fighting championship, the big Paulie Malignaggi versus Artem Lobov fight, Tampa, Florida, Saturday night pay-per-view, Fight TV, and however else you may be able to find it to watch it. Interesting fight, at least because of their bad blood. I'm curious to see. We had the rumors about gloves and stuff.
Oh yeah, what they're gonna be wearing.
Yeah. I think about the old UFC events. This kind of reminds me of one of those where you didn't know what was going to happen. Kind of going up to the event. Was it going to get canceled? Was it going to be a last minute change? Was are they going to walk in and tell Malignaggi it's 100% bare knuckle and he's going to back out? I mean, are they going to put boxing gloves on him and Lobov's going to say what the hell is going on? I mean, I don't know. So that is a little interest. It would be nice to know if they were going to have, since people are buying this, it would be nice to know if it's going to be bare knuckle or if somehow we're going to walk in there and they're going to have balloons on their hands. You know,
I don't think so. I just
I
you're closing them out. I mean, you're on a roll tonight, man.
well, I
you're,
mean, we
you're,
talked about it. So the one of the things we knew is that Florida wasn't real happy about the idea of bare knuckle, and then they started
Florida.
Florida. What did I say?
Yeah, no.
Whatever.
I'm just saying Florida. It's Florida. Florida.
Florida's Florida. So maybe
Yeah.
they just changed their mind. Maybe yeah. But whatever. So, anyways, I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be, if it goes down as it should be fireworks. I think
So,
Malinaji will light him up, but I
I,
think it'll
I
be
mean,
fun to watch.
so the folks at over at Front Proof Media, they're boxing guys. They're in the boxing space, and when I talk to them, actually, the guy that runs that site, Joseph Correa, is supposed to be shooting some photo for the event. So they'll probably be posting some stuff on Instagram soon, since that's their favorite outlet to post things. But uh, they called him Malinaji from the boxing space. Apparently, he's got a reputation for having brittle hands. So, um, whatever they're wearing, I'm sure Malinaji's all for it. And did you see the photos of his workout for this event? The way he was throwing punches.
No, I
Um,
didn't.
yeah, there's one like this if you're looking at the screen.
Yeah. So
It's,
he's kind of punching limp wrist a little bit.
I mean, I honestly don't know. I know like boxers like to do fluidity and be loose, but I didn't learn striking from a boxing background. I did all through martial arts, and we were always told to keep a tight fist, even you can keep a tight fist and stay loose. But I mean, everyone's got their own method and way of getting at it. And again, Malinaji's fought at the level of boxing that obviously you or I would never get to, even if we tried. But I wouldn't be surprised. What I said to Correa that's shooting the event, talking to him about it today, I said I wouldn't be surprised if they do bare knuckle the way that it's intended. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a handbrake in the first round if that's the reputation he has. The term used was feather fisted, which I've never heard, but I guess that means
Perhaps I mean, I can't pick against Malinaji, considering that this is still somewhat of a boxing bout,
yeah,
and like you said, he's a world champion at one point.
yeah,
The idea of him not being able to win a fight, I feel like it's going to be his defense that's going to be his advantage. That he won't get hit, and
yeah.
that's always the thing in boxing is the guys who win are
Well,
the guys who don't get hit, not necessarily the guys who hit the other guy. Um,
yeah, and the only thing that I mean, if he's training in a traditional boxing ring, I wonder if that messes with his footwork, considering that the BKFC circular ring, obviously space is taken away, and if that'll affect the way his footwork works. But again, I mean, like you said, I mean, he's they don't call it the sweet science because it's just people throwing haymakers at each other. So
Yeah, I mean, and in bare knuckle, I'm assuming he's talking to some people. You're obviously not supposed to throw with everything because you got to protect your hands. So I feel
yeah,
like if he kind of uses his movement and he kind of picks Lobov apart, it should be a win for him. Although the sport is obviously more brutal and a little bit unexpected. Also on the card, Chris Lieben,
mm.
Joey Beltran, and Joe Riggs for the MMA fans. So that's
So
Saturday night.
Lieben's he's fighting Dakota Cochran, who's I know he's fought in Bellator, but he was supposed to fight who was he supposed to fight? It was
Lieben was
supposed
supposed to fight Brendan Ward
Brennan
initially,
Ward, yeah.
and Cochran is coming off of a bare knuckle win knockout over Johnny Hendricks as a late
Mm.
replacement as well in the other organization that went under and didn't pay people. So it'll be an interesting fight. Lieben's 2-0 and just seems to be a he's got heavy hands, always has had heavy hands. So seems like it's kind of his thing. They do also have the lightweight tournament final between Reggie Barnett Jr. and Johnny Bedford. Both of those guys have done extremely well in the bare knuckle scene in the smaller weight class. And Joey Beltran, who's just an all around savage. He's facing Jamie Campbell. So uh, yeah, it'll be fun. That's Saturday is a loaded day. We're not going to get too deep into these cards, but also we have the UFC makes its first trip to South Carolina. for Hanato Moicano versus Korean Zombie Chan Sung Jun. Fun main event.
Yeah.
Not the deepest card of all time. Also, guys like John Lineker, though, are on it. Brian Barberina, Andrea KGB Lee, Ashley Yoder. Some familiar names. Luis Pena, Violent Bob Ross. He's got an interesting fight because he's fighting Matt Wyman, who's coming back after several years to return to the UFC, kind of fight out of nowhere. So we will be talking more about that card after the event on next Tuesday. We look to have John Lucas, the fight doctor from South Carolina, who will be working medicals for the show. He'll be doing medicals at the weigh-in starting on Friday morning. So we look for any inside information from him or any kind of behind the scenes medical stuff that me or you would really know nothing about. And I'm curious to see the experience working with the UFC as opposed to the King of the Cage or some other regional local boxing shows. So that's UFC. That main card starts at 4 p.m. Eastern time. That's on ESPN Plus, Ed's favorite channel. Another one of our favorite channels now is DAZN, which raised its prices too, which I'm not a huge fan of. But for some reason, they're tape delaying the Bellator event. It is Bellator London, so it is Bellator 223, so it is a numbered event. That's headlined by Rafael Lovato Jr. going after Gegard Musashi's middleweight bout. Really good fight, one we were supposed to have.
FYI, it's Raphael. He hates when people call him Rafael.
Well, that's his fault. But we'll call him Raphael then. But he's the only Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy that.
Oh, you're in a bad mood tonight.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, Musashi's gonna crush him, so he won't get his name called after that fight anyway. No, I think Musashi smashes him. Too good of a mixed martial artist. 53 career bouts versus 9, and I think Musashi is one of the top, 10, 15 pound for pound fighters in all of MMA. So I'm not sure about a start time for that. Obviously, I'm seeing that DAZN's showing that on tape delay, which is weird. I don't really understand that.
Yeah, I mean,
that will be one we'll just have to figure out as it comes closer.
I have it 2:30 p.m. my time, but I mean that could be the actual event. I don't know about broadcast time, so yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing, 2:30 Eastern, but that seems fairly, unless it's just tape delayed like an hour or two. That seems like more like the start time for the event. So, also on that card, Paul Daly, James Gallagher, Melvin Manhoff. Some good, exciting fighters. Paul Daly's fighting Eric Silva, which is actually a really good potential firework fight. So
yeah,
we'll be looking forward to recap those though next week. We had a lot to talk about Bellator 222, Fedor's return, and a rant here or there. But
there on the West Coast.
Anyways, fans can always follow us at Combat Hour on Twitter. Catch me at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. You can catch Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, at Carbeerzol on Instagram. Look forward to a lot of action, Ed. I'll be talking to you about watching these fights on Saturday and seeing what we're going to be talking about next week.
All right, cool. Don't hurt him, Hammer.
All right.